Hello, my name is John. Today I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm here to read the Daily Reflections book for August 12th, 2026. It's called A Look Backward. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we made a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, page 77. Excuse me. As a traveler on a fresh and exciting AA journey of recovery, I experienced a newfound peace of mind, and the horizon appeared clear and bright rather than obscure and dim. Reviewing my life to discover where I had been at fault seemed to be such an arduous and dangerous task. It was painful to pause and look backward. I was afraid I might stumble. Couldn't I put the past out of my mind and just live in my new golden present? I realized that those in the past whom I had harmed stood between me and my desire to continue my movement toward serenity. I had to ask for courage to face those persons from my life who still lived in my conscience, to recognize and deal with the guilt that their presence produced in me. I had to look at the damage I had done and become willing to make amends. Only then could my journey of the Spirit resume. Period. The end of the reading. So, first off, it said a look backward. First, we must do something. Next, we do something else. And then at the end of that sentence, it goes ... because tomorrow it will start with a clean sweep. And third, or rather ... and third, having thus cleared away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relationship with every human being we know. But that's for later. Today, a look backward. First, we take a look back, try to discover our faults or where we had been at fault, and then make a vigorous attempt to repair that damage that we have done. Reviewing my life seemed arduous, dangerous. I was afraid I might relapse. Couldn't I put the past out of my mind and just live in my present golden moment? What's it say? In my new golden present. No. I realized that those in the past whom I had harmed were in between me and serenity. These are all my words, paraphrasing. So I had to ask for courage to face those persons from my life who still lived in my conscience, to recognize and deal with the guilt that their presence produced in me. I had to look at the damage I had done and become willing to make amends. Only then could my journey of the Spirit continue, which I'm guessing means a bit more serenity. Only then could I have serenity. If I had courage enough to face those persons from my life who still lived in my conscience. Okay, so already that might sound a little bit easier, because if they're only living in your conscience and you only need the courage to face them there, how frightening, embarrassing, wrong, painful, disturbing could that be? Well, quite a bit, but nothing like the face-to-face in the same room kind of exchange. So this is an instance for sure that dead people, say you have harmed people that have since moved on to the next phase of our existence, died, in other words. How are you going to make amends to them? Well, I realized that those in the past whom I had harmed stood between me and my desire to continue my movement towards serenity. That movement towards serenity might be part of this. Only then could my journey of the spirit resume. If this person's dead and only having presence in your conscience, in your mind, when you remember them, or maybe they won't ever go away, it seems, and you can't stop thinking about the wrong you caused somebody, and now you would think, how am I ever going to make an amend to this person? I know of at least one way. Sit down, stand up, whatever. Use a notepad on your phone, on your laptop, on a tablet, or the good old-fashioned way. Get something to write with, a pen, say, and a piece of paper, index card, whatever. Maybe it will take an entire legal page. One of them big yellow ones. I don't have one handy right this second. And write a letter. That's why I said you don't have to sit, but sit down with a piece of paper and something to write with. And write, "Dear dead person," not literally. Whatever this person's name is, write that. Dear whatever this person's name is. Or maybe you don't want to address them as dear. Maybe you've got some other either term of endearment or otherwise. And the point here is that since they're dead and you can't face-to-face talk to them as we would normally experience it, sit down, write a letter addressed to this person, and write it as if this person was sitting on the other side of the table or right next to you, and you were actually talking to them, describing maybe how you feel about causing some harm to them, or what you thought had been harming to them, or describe to them in the way that, however it came about, you did some action to cause harm. And once you can get all that down and captured on paper, I also don't want to leave out this part, I guess. I don't know what order to put this in. I'll just be lucky to hit some of these important points, maybe. Is here, what did it say in today's thing? As you're writing this letter to this deceased individual, say something like, now that I've gotten sober, or while becoming sober, any kind of statement like that. Something that's been bothering you deeply, greatly, however it's bothering you, and you wish to make an amend to that, would be something. So here's how I am now. I'm sorry that I caused this damage to you in the past. I would hope you can forgive me. I don't want to give you any more than that. So let's read through this again. I'll look backward. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we had been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. You can find that in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book on page 77. As a traveler on a fresh and exciting AA journey of recovery, I experienced a newfound peace of mind, and the horizon appeared clear and bright rather than obscure and dim. Reviewing my life to discover where I had been at fault seemed to be such an arduous and dangerous task. It was painful to pause and look backward. I was afraid I might stumble. Couldn't I put the past out of my mind and just live in my new golden present? You know, a lot of times we try to do that, and then, at least in my case, I found it took me a very long time to make a good 8th step. I tried partial ones. What's it say somewhere in the big book here? Half measures availed us nothing. Going halfway into making amends to people is right next door, or only as good, or almost only as good as nothing. Yeah. A stricter version of that statement, you may as well have not done anything. Because if a half measure avails nothing, that's nothing. Nothing minus nothing is nothing. Nothing plus nothing is nothing. That kind of thing. But we need to start somewhere. So maybe you can start. Here's another thing too. This is kind of more 9th step things, or of the 9th step. If we're to become willing in the 8th step and we can't seem to get there, maybe you could write a letter to the living people. Maybe make sure it doesn't get out of your control. Tear it up and throw it away as soon as you're done with that exercise in one day. You write down the stuff that you think you might want to say to these people. However, we're just making a list of people we had harmed. Not how we harmed them, not why we harmed them, or where or when. Not necessarily. Made a list. What's it say? Step 8. Because this is kind of important that we do this a little tiny bit at a time, and do it to the best of our ability at the time we're actually doing it. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So right away I get frightened with the word all. So I made 2 lists. I kept one list in my head I wasn't ever going to do anything more about, and then I started making out a list of people I had harmed. And for me, I began with my family and immediate surrounding people, because there were not many left. So I figured that would be an easier way of doing this. And, well, it got me started. And that's very important. What's the thing about the most important step in a journey is the first one? Because without that, you're not getting anywhere. What's it say? Where I left off. Couldn't I put the past out of my mind and just live in my new golden present? Well, I tried that. It didn't work. For 2 years, I was absolutely miserable. And then I finally did my 5th step, which, what's it say here? I had to ask for courage to face those persons from my life whom still lived in my conscience. Like I say, I was miserable for 2 years for a bunch of reasons. I was an alcoholic and I wasn't any longer drinking alcohol, so that was miserable. I guess it was tolerable. I put up with it. I was a wreck, not very personable, let's say. But I was still functioning. I was still going to work and doing these things like that. But anyhow, what I'm trying to get at here is that after 2 years of being miserable, I finally got a sponsor. That was a big, big, different, important thing to do. Um, and then I did a fifth step after reviewing with my sponsor my fourth step, which is a fearless and searching moral inventory, in my words. It's pretty close to the truth. So what I'm trying to get at is that why can't I just put these people out of my mind as much as I can? Because that's the problem. Put these people out of your mind and just live in my new golden present. Well, maybe you can. I couldn't. I tried that for 2 years. I made this step 4 list. I did a step 5. It took me 2 years to finally get that done and actually go do it. And that was a huge difference in my life because I realized what I had done, although really not recommended for anybody, and straight up evil to people, just wrong, bad, dark wrong. I did that as a very wounded individual, drinking and inebriated by alcohol or alcoholism. It's no excuse, but it helped me frame it in a way that, okay, yes, that was horrible. I did all these things. I told this one person everything. It was a clergy member. That was my fifth step. They said essentially what I just said. They said, well, yeah, that was bad, wrong, painful for everybody involved, I'm sure. Usually humans don't lash out in the way that I did unless they felt like they had been harmed very greatly. So these sound like excuses. Maybe they are, but that's what happened. And then if you just leave it at that and try and stuff it in some corner of your mind and never try and get it off your chest or come clean with it or try and make any kind of repair, it eats away at you. At least it ate away at me. So I couldn't sleep anymore. And I had to do something. So then, it's like I got the sponsor and I went over my fourth step and then I actually did a fifth step. And then step 6 and 7, and now we're at step 8. Step 6 and 7, this is where it says here, why can't I just put this out of my mind and just live in the here and now? I realized that those in the past whom I had harmed, and now if they're dead, it's like, what are you going to do? That's why I suggested you write this letter. Maybe you can make a tape recording or a message or something like that. Some way that you can vocalize it or get it out physically, I think, is the important thing here. And be able to look right at it. It's like, I'm sorry, Jack, that I ran over your car or ran into whatever it is. And now that I've been reviewing my life and I've quit drinking, I feel horribly bad. Is there any way I can repair it? I'll do anything. I had to ask for courage. Okay, so to face those people from my life who still lived in my conscience. So again, like a dead person pretty much only held it alive in your conscience. So steps 6 and 7. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And then step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And then step 8, we make this list and become willing to make amends. So all the way through all that, even to the end of the 8th step. Well, I mean, to the end of the 7th step, you might just say, I think, and it would be correct to say, put it this way, that you could do all this in an afternoon just sitting in a chair with some deep reflection and maybe a piece of paper to write down your 4th step inventory. So there isn't like a lot of real action as you would think, or as I would have thought, or as I was thinking. It's like, oh, that's easy. I just read these. Well, I'll knock those out like that. No, not when I really started to get to why I was doing them, and the corrections that could be made, and how much better I could feel, and how much more successful as a human I could become. Because I was a wreck. Pretty much, I mean, like, definitely a D- human, like right next to failing as a human. Granted, whatever degree that you've been blessed, or however you've been using yourself, and the qualities you've been given or granted or created with, or that you've instilled upon yourself through education and whatever, I could have been doing much, much better in my life. For whatever reason, though, I didn't want to or didn't do that. And I think, that kind of helps with why I kept drowning my sorrows in alcohol. Because I wasn't living up to my potential. I was afraid. It is usually the biggest thing. And so, step 6 and 7, entirely ready. It's like, wow, look, I'm a failing human being. So I'm ready now. God, remove all these defects of character. What defects? Maybe they're in step 4, searching for this moral inventory of ourselves. And then you humbly ask to have these shortcomings removed. I thought, okay, that'll take 14 seconds. It's like, well, no, that didn't happen that quickly either. So anyways, I got to this point, step 8, made a list of people I had harmed, and upon that little bit of further review, it's like, oh, I think in yesterday's reading, or the day before, it was talking about lying to people, and that people are, oh, that's December, no wonder. Here, August 10th, maybe. Yes, August 10th, redoubling our efforts. As I continue to grow in sobriety, or further look at my 8th step list of people I had harmed, I become more aware of myself as a person of worth, D- at the time. I still fail, or come close to failing on a daily basis. Some area. Anyhow, in the process, I am better able to see others as persons of worth. And with this comes the realization that these were people whom I had hurt in my drinking days. I didn't just lie, I lied about Tom as a person of worth. It's like I actively singled out Tom or whoever in your life and lied about them. And then I realized, hey, I finally figured out I'm a person of worth. That kind of happened after the 5th step. That's what the clergy member got me to realize. It's like, that was horrible, yes, but you are a human. Humans are frail and prone to creating a lot of wreckage in their life if they're not careful, even if they are careful. Humans are complex, and we can do a lot of really great things. We can do a lot of horrible things. If you're all liquored up, it's quite a bit easier to do the wrong, bad, ugly, evil, dark things, harmful, hurtful things. So I realized it's like, oh, well, that was a mistake. Oh, I was liquored up. I made mistakes. Getting liquored up, getting drunk was the number one first mistake. What are we doing here today? It said something, look backward. A look backward. First, we take a look back and try to discover where we had been at fault. Well, right there, I started drinking at some point, and then I started drinking out of control, etc. Next, we made a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. All this stuff, right? These things are just like a bare beginning. Because if say you could get all this jammed into your head and have ready access to it, another really good thing is to go to a meeting and discuss what you think you've learned, and then find out you didn't learn anything, or that you're, completely wrong, I guess. Where are we at? 26 minutes. I'm not in that much of a hurry today. Maybe I should be. Did I finish this off here? That thought about trying to explain this line here. I had to ask for the courage to face those persons who still lived in my conscience. That's like step 6 and 7. Entirely ready to have these defects removed, and then ask humbly ask to have these defects removed. Then step 8, we made a list of these failings in your life that you caused, say, and then step 9, we try and actively repair them, but we're not there yet. Okay, so, and then it says, that's a fix for this thing. Couldn't I put the past out of my mind and just live in my new golden present? I couldn't sleep. I made sure that I had step 4, 5, 6, and 7 complete. Then I did step 8 completely, sincerely, honestly, and then presented it to my sponsor, and we reviewed it, and to ensure that I had done it as thoroughly as possible. Maybe I was still holding things back, previous, because that happens. Sometimes we just forget. That's why we write things down in this program. Then we don't forget, but don't let written records escape your attention and fall into the wrong hands, say. So why couldn't I just put this out of my mind and live happily ever after? Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. If you can't, like I couldn't, I had to make sure. I heard this at a meeting. Keep backing up the steps, meaning if you're having a problem with step 8 right now, maybe your step 7 wasn't thorough or sincere enough, or helping you in the way that it could. Or step 6. If 7 isn't working, maybe 6 is the problem. If 6 and 7 aren't working, maybe 5 was the problem. Maybe all of these steps aren't doing any good for you at all, and then you get right back to step 1 if you keep backing up and you haven't arrived at the conclusion that you're powerless over alcohol and your life is unmanageable. Maybe that's just, that whole statement is wrong and your life isn't unmanageable. It's hard for me to imagine anyone's life not being unmanageable. That's unmanageable. That's okay. I can't manage. I'm drinking instead, or anything else, because I cannot manage. Here's a brighter ray of light here, a little sunshine on that. Even though you think your life is unmanageable, it isn't, because like I said, as complex as humans are and the enormous capacity we have for damage and hurt, equally we can fix stuff too very well, surprisingly well, with just a little bit of sincere, courageous honor and effort. It's getting your hands on an honorable, strictly honorable effort, a strictly honest, honorable, courageous, as it's put into action effort. That is tough. Why? Fear of failure and fear of success. Take a look at that. Go look around YouTube or somewhere and ask a search bot or a chat bot, what is the fear of success? I'm sure that's a real thing. Anyhow, man, thank you for coming by here today. I'll get back with you later. So, goodbye.